In this video, I'm going to talk about the improvements that I made to version 1.0 to come up with version 1.1. The first one that started the whole thing was error detection. And here in chromosome 17, I found a conflict that I had not detected before in my original 1.0 spreadsheet. So the way that I implemented this is, here is the master switch where you can set maternal and paternal. This one is based on chromosome X, so it doesn't have any effect here on 17. This one here is basically picking up from the row above and copying the value to this row. And the same thing for this one, it's picking up the value from below, and depending on the phase, either copies it straight out or it reverses it. And then the final one, this is the what actually gets implemented, or the final result. This one takes a combination of all of them. So the master is an override, which means that no matter what you do in all these three, the master will get copied straight into the total. If you don't have anything for the master, then this one here will take a combination of these three. And the way that it's working better is because I'm saying if any of them have the maternal setting, then go ahead and give me the maternal setting. But at the same time, if any of them has the paternal setting, then give me the paternal setting as well. And so in this case, you can see the master is set to blank. So what it's doing is it's combining these three, and that's how you get MP. So this is where the conflict is, and this is something that was not picked up before. This is spreadsheet 1.0, and here is the same data. But what was happening here, even though this formula was picking up the M from above, and then because it switches phases right there, it was converting from M to P. So this is correct, but this formula here was supposed to summarize these two columns into this one. But as you remember, in version 1.0, the way that the what is now the master setting was basically split into two columns. So before you had to do two data entries, and when I did this data entry, it basically got rid of the formulas, and that means that it's completely ignoring this P right here. So it was not able to detect the conflict because I had overwritten the formula. So this is probably the most important finding that I had in spreadsheet 1.0. And so when I found the conflict, which you can also find by going into this view, conflicts, and this is the only one that I had. So if I go back to my chromosome 17, so when I found it, I started looking into it. Why is it that I had a conflict? What was causing it? And what happened is, here in chromosome 17, you can see the first kid ends at 2.7 million, and this is the name of the person. And then here you can see that it reverses. So here's phase 2, and it starts where the other one finished. So this is the recombination point right here, and it happens to be at 2.7 million. And in my settings, which actually in spreadsheet 1.0, my settings were right here at the end. This setting, I had specified that the minimum size was 3.7 million. So what I had to do was to reduce from 3.7 million. If I actually make it 2.6, then what I'm basically saying is, okay, it's possible to have a block size of less than 3.7. So that allows this block right here to be independent of the other one. Whereas in version, by saying 3.7 is the minimum, I was saying that this block or this fragment was not able to exist on its own, that it needed to be absorbed by the fragment right next to it. So now by setting the threshold to 2.6, I'm basically allowing these fragments um, to exist on their own, and now I don't have the conflict anymore. So to recap, if I set this to 3.7 the way that it was there before, then it wants to make this fragment part of the other one, and since here this person is in phase 2 and she's maternal, and here it's a phase 1, it tries to set one of the two to the paternal, and that's where you get the conflict. So I'll leave this one at 2.6. So that's the new setting that I'm using now in version 1.1. And if I look at the DNA painter, we can see here in 17, that's what happened. It started out as maternal, and then at 2.7 million, it switches out to paternal. The downside is that now you have gaps between these two fragments. If they were 3.7 million or smaller, they were being joined so that you had one continuous fragment here. But now if it's greater than 2.7 million, it will stay as a gap. Anything less than 2.7 will be joined together as long as both sides are the same type, paternal paternal, or if you have maternal maternal, the gap will be joined. So going back to the spreadsheet 1.1, this area here has been streamlined so that you have all settings right next to each other. So this one is the master, and as mentioned before, if you have a setting here, it goes straight into the total. But if you have settings here, they get all added up together to make up the total. So it's very easy to see the conflicts, because if you have P in one and M in the other one, then the total will be the combination of both, and they will be highlighted as a conflict. Another improvement also is that there's only one single place for data entry, whereas before in version 1.0 you had several different places for data entry. There was this one right here and this one right here. So now they're both combined into one single column for data entry. Another improvement is when you start out with the spreadsheet, everything is blank. The entire spreadsheet, no data, no formulas, nothing. And so when you bring in your block of data, you can actually let me make this blank, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to select from row 5 all the way to the bottom and delete everything. So now the spreadsheet is completely blank. So if I go to GEDmatch, copy that, and if I paste it here, set that to the end, and then go back to GEDmatch, and this is the X, so paste it here, set this to the X. So now if I want to remove the grandparent like this one, before there was an issue in version 1.0 because there were formulas here, and if you deleted this row, The ones above and below depended on it, and so you would get an error message. But now in this version, because there are no formulas here, it's completely empty. You're free to start deleting the kits that you don't need before you add formulas. So here I can just delete and nothing happens. And actually I can just use a filter by email, find my kids, and then look at the names and anything that says grandpa and grandma, isolate them, select all of them and delete them. And that's the way to get started. And then when you're done deleting data, you can come over here to macros and sort the data and add formulas. And this is a three-step process. The data gets sorted. This column right here with the email, see how they overflow onto the next one, which is kind of like a pain. I found a way to clip, even though it already does say right here clip. Whenever you import data, it's almost like it ignores the setting. So I added that to the macro so that it's going to sort, clip it, and then it's going to add all the formulas, which you will see coming up. So now you see the formula. The script is done. And if I go all the way to the bottoms of the formula, you can see that it ends one row below the data. But there's nothing more right next to it. So in this improvement, you can erase kits without having the need to go to Excel, paste over there, erase, and then bring the process data over here. Another side effect to this whole thing is that because the macro takes the formulas which are stored in row number 3 and copies all the way down to here, that means that there is no need to have more formulas below here. And since there are less formulas overall, the spreadsheet will run a lot faster. And so as I mentioned, the data starts in 5, but the formulas are here in number 3. Nothing in, well, actually in number 4 as well, but the formulas that I'm using are here in number 3. And they get copied to 5 and below. Another improvement is when you find emails that are not labeled. In the previous version, you would get something like this, the ones that are colored, and you would not be able to see the other ones that were not colored. And so you had to first find them, remember the email, then you needed to use the other filter by email, type in this one, and then you would get a view like this. In this version, you get everything together, so you get everything that has been labeled already, plus the ones that match those that don't have a label. So here, to show you what I mean, this is an actual view of how it looks. This email here is paternal. This one is, see how it says unlabeled one copy of this email. This is the one that's unlabeled. And so here says I have the paternal setting, but I have one other copy of this email that's not labeled, and it's this one right here. So by having everything together in one screen, the finding them and fixing them should go a little bit faster. And then the final improvement was by adding a list of the chromosomes and where they end. If, as mentioned in the previous email, if I'm working, let's say, with chromosome 13, and I have a paternal fragment that makes it all the way to 114 million, and so that would leave 1 million left that's not categorized. If I'm saying that the minimum size is 2.6 million, then that 1 million at the very end would also be categorized as paternal. It would be absorbed by the fragment right next to it. So having these here basically helps you to fill in those little gaps at the very end of the chromosome. And as a nice bonus, you can also uh, get an idea for how you're doing painting your segments. So here, if I go to the export view, so here in the export view, you can see how many base pairs have been painted or assigned to maternal or paternal, along with the percentage. And I just had noticed that the reason why this number was being shown as above 100% was because I still had my grandparent kids in the data. I didn't remove all of them, and so, but this is the correct setting for now. I removed all the grandparent kids, and so this is how much I have painted. And here in the export view, you can see the breakdown by chromosome, and you can also get a feel for which one is the largest. So here I have in chromosome 10, it's split up into two, and here's one that has almost 6% and the other one 51%. Actually, here is one with 56% in chromosome 13, and that's on the grandmother's side. But if I switch over to the grandfather's side, here you can see 1 in 15 with 69%. So this is just a nice little bonus of being able to have this here. Then it allows me to recalculate how much has been painted so far. And the this setting right here for whether the parent is male, it was also mentioned in my previous video on how to use this spreadsheet. But the effect is, if I'm working with my dad, then I click this to true because he's male, and that means that everybody that matches him in chromosome 22. So if I go filter by chromosome and set this one to X, you can see these formulas here, even though I have the master, which is not needed down here, because by saying that he's male, everybody that matches him in chromosome 22 is getting this setting, the maternal setting, because that's the only way that they can match my dad on this chromosome, because they're all related to my grandma. So all of them are set to maternal. So that's pretty much it, the rundown of all the major changes, but the major one is the one about being able to pick up conflicts better, and by finding that segment right there that had the recombination at 2.7 allowed me to make the threshold a little bit smaller. The downside is that now I can see gaps, whereas before this was one segment. Now I have the gap, but it's more accurate. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.